What's up, beautiful people? This is Sindafam. Welcome to the channel. Today we have this very interesting video, and it's from Sowell, and it's titled Sowell versus Trevor on slavery and reparations. Awesome. I'm excited to check this one out. Let's check it out.
So to your question, I think you have to understand what the word reparations means first.
Okay.
So reparations, you are repairing something that you have broken. You are paying for something that you were supposed to pay for. I'm not saying that there aren't people living in America today who are suffering and are going through pain and strife because of what's happening when it comes to the machines taking jobs, factories becoming industrialized, etc. But reparations is a specific conversation about a specific time in America, and that is black people were slaves.
Article that got a lot of attention in The Atlantic a couple of years ago called The Case for Reparations by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Quote, "White supremacy is a force so fundamental to America that it is difficult to imagine the country without it. Reparations is the price we must pay to see ourselves squarely."
Really?
Close quote. And Tom Sowell, who actually saw Jim Crow with his own eyes and experienced it, responds how?
It would be nice to know his evidence for what he said, just to be old-fashioned about it. No, it was a rotten system. But I don't know how we get from that to reparations. I mean, what we see in the United States in terms of the bad things, you see all around the world. If you were to give reparations to everyone whose ancestors had been slaves, I suspect that you would have to give reparations to more than half the entire population of the globe. Slavery was not confined to one set of races.
Thank you, sir.
I suspect that most of the people who were either slaves or slave owners around the world were neither white nor black.
Thank you, sir.
I mean, this was a universal curse of the human species.
Come
Africa, the
on.
Middle East, Asia, slavery took place everywhere.
And it continued elsewhere long after
Africa.
it was abolished in the Western countries.
Yes, sir. Thank
You know what I mean?
sir.
It's,
God bless
I've
you,
even
sir.
heard people say like, oh, but there were some of the Irish who were indentured. Like, yeah, slavery. Look at the numbers, look at the time, look at the level of work. You could not work toward your freedom. For most black people in America, this was a time when you lived and died as a slave. And so that's what reparations is about.
The other thing, I have a slight sidebar in there on the history of slavery. The history of slavery existed all over the world for thousands of years among all sorts of people, as far back as the history of the human species goes. It's one of many evils that the left tries to localize, when in fact it is a universal evil.
Universal
But
evil.
more than that, as much as slavery is repudiated around the world today, prior to the 18th century, I know of no serious effort to abolish the institution anywhere.
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 Not in Africa, not in the Arabian
Not
Night.
in Africa in the 21st century. When Adam Smith wrote in 1776 that the only place in the world where slavery had been abolished completely was Western Europe. And so this was
As late as the year this country was founded.
yes. And so the idea that this is something that the United States had that nobody else had, or the other countries that didn't have, it's been estimated that there are more slaves in India than in the entire Western Hemisphere. And that's before and after Columbus got here. Right.
And so I hear what you're saying, but I think that's a completely separate conversation that needs to be had about the now. Because if you are not careful, what you then do is you combine everybody's suffering into the same bowl, and you make it seem like all injustices have the same weighting, and they don't. Just like crimes, theft isn't the same as murder. We don't try them the same way. And as much as there is a white person who's suffering today, I feel for anybody who's suffering, because I know what it's like to be poor. I know what it's like to suffer. I didn't come from a wealthy family. We struggled when I was growing up. But I also understand that there are levels of that suffering. And so sometimes white people, it does block a white person, because you go white privilege, and a person goes, I'm poor and I'm white, where's the privilege? White people are like, I wish I could activate my white privilege. I wish I could do it right now. White privilege, give me something. I get that. I get that. Trust me, I get it. It is hard to accept that you have benefits because of the color of your skin if you cannot see the benefits that you have.
The book that I'm writing now, I discovered this is true not only in the United States, it's true in England, and the situation is wholly different. And yet, if you read the data, for example, from London, the educational tests and so forth, you see that there, immigrants from Africa pass this test they have. I'm talking about low-income people now. Nearly 60% of the time. Blacks from the Caribbean, like 50%, so on. Native-born whites in the same low-income bracket pass this test 30% of the time. And it's the same thing. The foreign people come in, they haven't had generations of being steeped in the welfare state vision, the vision of grievances, victimology, and resentments. The idea that there are enemies out there dedicated to keeping you down. That's the message that's been pumped into the head of the white lower class in Britain, and that's the image that's been pumped into the black low-income people in the United States, and the results are the same in both cases.
But the thing I try to explain to a person is, think of it more like golf. Don't think of it as privilege, then think of it like a handicap. Right? In golf, they acknowledge that you are in a position where you need so many advantages to be competitive in the game.
Is that we ought not to be doing this?
You know, there are various laws and policies that benefit one group at the expense of another. But I think affirmative action has the distinction of being one that it harms everybody, though in different ways. And so there's a lot of evidence that there are black kids who have all the qualifications to be successes in college, who nevertheless are failures because they are systematically mismatched with institutions whose standards they don't meet, even though they may meet the standards of 80 or 90% of the colleges in America. I remember first aware of this when I was teaching at Cornell, and I found that half the black students at Cornell were on some kind of academic probation. And so I went over to the administration building and looked up the SATs of these students. The average black student at Cornell at that time scored at the 75th percentile.
Which is pretty darn good.
Yes. And so that means that in most colleges in this country, they would have no trouble, and many of them would be on the dean's list. But at Cornell, the average liberal arts student at that time was in the 99th percentile. And when you're teaching the students like that, you teach at a pace that most people of any race cannot keep up with. And it was always complained that I was assigning all kinds of reading, but heck, I'm teaching kids who are in the top 1%. They can keep up with the reading that I'm assigning.
So Cornell was taking very talented black kids and spending 4 years teaching them to feel inadequate.
Yes, and succeeding at that.
Right? So what they say is you have a handicap of 15, so that means like you're going to be hitting from this tee and you get more chances to get the ball in because we understand the position you're in. And if you're a black person in America, from slavery, from day one.
Pondering all this, I noticed something, a column that you wrote, this is a couple of years ago, in which you rebutted Nicholas Kristof of the New York Times. And Kristof had ascribed the gaps between African Americans and whites in America, gaps in wealth, gaps in educational achievement, the usual gaps, to, and this is a quotation from Kristof, to the lingering effects of slavery, close quote.
Oh, yes.
And here's Tom Sowell, quote, if we wanted to be serious about evidence, we might compare where blacks stood 100 years after the end of slavery with where they stood after 30 years of the liberal welfare state. In other words, we could compare hard evidence on the legacy of slavery with hard evidence on the legacy of liberals, close quote.
Okay. And the number of injustices that have held black people back in America amount to an insurmountable, like you look at black people's freedom, you look at black people's land, just land alone. The amount of wealth you can acquire over time if you own land is exponential, because you have the land, you have the fact that you can borrow based on the land, you have the fact that you can use the money that you have borrowed to grow more wealth, you can use it to grow your family's wealth. Just taking that away from black people alone.
Right, right. And also, if you think you've been wronged, your recourse might also be more likely to politics, to try to redress this whole redistribution,
yes. Oh, yeah.
rather than hit the books, acquire the skills, get the job.
But the other thing too, one of the my favorite statistic in there is that the poverty rate among blacks as a whole is 22%. Among whites as a whole is 11%, and among black married couples is 7.5%.
So
and it's been and black married couples have never had a poverty rate as high as 10% in any year since 1994.
all right.
Wow.
So to the cry, what is to be done? Tom Sowell answers:
It's been done.
get an education, get married, have kids after you get married. That's sort of the answer, right?
Well, yes, and the things that work for other people tend to work pretty generally.
All right.
Is crippling them. And so you combine that with slavery, and then you look at Jim Crow laws. You didn't let black people in America live in the areas that they wanted to live in. They couldn't get loans from the banks that they wanted to get loans from. And then on top of that, when they started getting the loans from American banks were found to be giving them higher interest rates when in fact they were the same risk as many of the other races that they were giving loans to. So when you combine all of those things, I think it's safe to say that black Americans have a conversation that they need to be having with the United States. Doesn't involve me, doesn't involve white people, it's like, yo, American government, meet the black people. That's it. Have that conversation.
In terms of political leaders, all the incentives politically are for black leaders to blame all problems in the black community on the larger society. And that enables them to take on the role of being the defender of the black community against enemies, which in turn creates the situation in which many blacks don't feel that anything that they do is going to help themselves unless it's done politically as a group. That there's no point. I mean, why would you, if you believe what they say, why would you want to knock yourself out in the school knowing that the man is not going to let you get anywhere? One of the most pathetic things I heard in recent years was a young black man saying that, at one point he thought he would join the Air Force and become a pilot. And then he says he realized that the white man is not going to let a black man become a pilot. And he was saying this decades after the Tennessee Airmen had established their reputation in combat in Europe. But the hopelessness is one of the big products of the race industry. That you have no chance. I remember giving a talk at Marquette, and at the end of the talk, among the questions that was asked, a young black man got up and he said, even though I am graduating from Marquette University, what hope is there for me? And having gone through college when I was in the 50s, I don't remember any blacks saying that in the 1950s, when there was a lot more obstacles to overcome than there were when this guy is graduating from Marquette. Why
now?
But you have to produce that kind of feeling in order to serve the interests of those in the race industry.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Somewhere watching this interview, there's a young Thomas Sowell. There's an African American who's smart and wants to do something with his life.
What's your advice for him?
It seems to me we've already got one piece of advice you'd offer to him is stay away from the racist industry. Stay away from the race hustlers. What advice would you give a young Thomas Sowell? How do you make something of yourself as an African American in America today?
The way anybody else would. You equip yourself with skills that people are willing to pay for.
Ooh.
All right. Tom.
This right here, equip yourself with skills that people are willing to pay for. Thank you, sir, Dr. Thomas Sowell. You couldn't have said it any better. I keep saying this, like, come on, African Americans, especially black folks living in America. When I hear them complain, I be like, come on, is this the white people you see that have skills and everything? They are not any better than you. The only thing is you're just so focused on the wrong outcomes, thinking about race and being in the same party with the race hustlers. I keep saying it, like, come on, what is wrong? What exactly is wrong? Come on, go to school, get a job. It's not that hard. It's pretty simple. Read a book, educate yourself. Oh my God, Dr. Thomas Sowell, you couldn't have said it any better. This is why I love listening to Thomas Sowell, because he always have interesting knowledge to share. Interesting. Oh my God, I've learned from him in the past couple of months and weeks that I've been checking and learning his historical and knowledge sharing videos. Come on. Now let's talk about slavery. Whenever I hear people say slave or America indulged in slavery, slavery and everything, I'd be like, have you guys really read history? Or do you guys even know the history of slaves? Slave was not a white man thing. Slavery, oh my goodness, slavery did not just occur in America, in the shores of America. It was a common thing. It was everywhere, as far as human race you can trace. As far as human race can go. But I find it so alarming when I hear people complain and be like, oh, maybe the annoying thing is they make it seem like slavery was only done or practiced in America. And it's so wrong. And that is why a lot of these black folks just focus their mind only on the sufferings and everything that their ancestors went through and everything. They've forgotten that there is a good thing out of the land of America. And the worst part is what the people who instill this slavery talk, racist talk, whatever it is, oppression, victimhood, victimology, the people who instill these ideas, thoughts in your head, this is what they want you to think, because they don't want you to think right. They don't want you to know the truth, and you're falling for this. And it drives me wild whenever I hear them complain and talk about these things, and when I be like, what are you talking about? It's just like y'all are blindfolded to see the good of the land, and it's annoying. Whenever I hear it, I cringe. I be like, nah, these people, they've been brainwashed. And it's so sad. It's really sad. Tap into the good of America. See, even immigrants, even foreigners that are not even in America, they know these things. They know that there is good in the land, and when they come, they tap into it. And it pains me to the brain that black Americans, African Americans, or black folks in America, they don't tap into these opportunities. It drives me wild. But yeah, just like what Dr. Thomas Sowell have said, to the black folks who are consumed with the ideology placed in their mind by the race hustlers and every thing that they've been brainwashed with. Equip yourself with skills that people are willing to pay for. Like, listen, if you're not taking anything from the video, this right here, equip yourself with skills. Listen, this can be bought at all, because I keep asking, okay, how is it that you all have schools free, for that matter, free schools, especially from kindergarten to high school is free, but you're not tapping into the opportunities it's giving? Oh my God. But I still believe there's still greater good for the black folks and the black community, or for African Americans. I still believe that they are still going to come to see the light. But all the same, equip yourself with skills. Learn good skills. Educate yourself. Oh my God. See, it can't be bought. I love listening to Thomas Sowell so far. He's intelligent, and I'm so glad that I got the opportunity to learn from him. And I'm still learning from him, because he's got a lot more knowledge to share, which I am ready to consume, because listen, this kind of knowledge is invaluable, and I really do appreciate knowledge like this and information like this. Honestly, I do. But yeah, I would really love your thoughts and your contribution in the comment down below. Let me know what your thoughts are regarding this issue, this topic. I would also really love to read from you. You can share your beautiful stories in the comment down below. And until next time, see you in the next video.